I need to be there, but I'm here. Most people don't know what to do with that. It's very uncomfortable for some people, just being somewhere, especially with another human. For example, if I'm sitting here with someone and I'm just there, not saying anything, to most people that's very uncomfortable because they're waiting, they're not being. Use waiting as a stepping stone to accelerating your spiritual growth, your personal growth. You'll no longer have these uncomfortable situations where you're uncomfortable with silence, where you're uncomfortable with the presence of another person, well, where you're uncomfortable with the situation where you have to wait because you're not waiting. You're genuinely being there, and you don't project yourself mentally to the next moment. So then you become frustrated. You don't do that. You relax in that state of beingness. You relax in that state of awareness. You relax in that state of aliveness every time you're waiting for something. Step out of thinking and just be there. Instead of calling it waiting, call it being. Use waiting as a practice of presence. There's many times throughout our days that we're waiting for something. If you drive a car, you have to wait for traffic signals. You have to wait for other drivers. If you walk, you have to wait until you get there. There's many options as far as waiting for opportunities of, we call it personal growth, spiritual growth. Waiting, I usually call it being, because I've shifted waiting from waiting with anticipation to being in presence. And using waiting as a practice throughout my life situations has really been a very decent help, because it basically determines if you're in anticipation, projecting yourself, and so much waiting that you do throughout just one day that it can accelerate that awakening state, if you want to call it that. So use waiting as a tool for personal growth, spiritual growth. Don't get to the light, you're at the red light in the car, and start thinking about the next place you need to be. That's not it. Using waiting as a space or area to bring in more presence or beingness is ultimately the best practice, because, like I said here, there's so much waiting that we do. There's waiting at the light. There's waiting for your food to be prepared. There's waiting for your shower to be ready. There's waiting for your time to get off of work. There's many aspects of waiting that we do. So just imagine that's so many practices throughout one day where it ultimately helps you stay on track, if we will, with your spiritual process, your spiritual journey, your personal growth journey, and using waiting as a tool to, every time you're waiting for something, step out of thinking and just be there. Instead of calling it waiting, call it being. You use little concepts, mental concepts like this to help in the, in the spiritual growth process. That's a part of reconstructing the thought process too. We talked about that. Not making any moments a means to an end. So even for example, I'm out here in nature and there's things going on. There's people need to do this and need to do that. Hopefully they're not protecting themselves. But for example, we heard the trash truck just go by. As many times I have stopped and just be while the sound goes by. I do that here for us to sort of relate in a spacious moment. But ultimately, I'm not waiting for the sound to go by. I'm actually deeply attentive and hearing it and hearing the other sounds, the birds chirping, the insects biting my legs, or whatever it may be. But using moments where you have to wait for something is a wonderful practice because there's so many moments that is we can talk here forever about the situations that you're in about where you have to wait for something. But ultimately, if you're shifting that waiting to being when situations come up in life where you have to wait, it will be at ease. You're in the grocery store. Oh, that's a main one. Everyone goes there. And sometimes you go at a time where it's very busy and you have to wait. So instead of projecting yourself to the checkout stand, to the clerk already, just be there. Shift your attention to the rhythm of your breathing while you're in the store and just look around. You'll probably begin to notice things that you haven't noticed and you go to that store all the time. But you're using waiting as a practice of compassionate awareness. I call it presence. Instead of waiting, it turns into being. And you can be there at ease without the projection of needing to get there, turning that moment to a means to an end where I need to be there, but I'm here. Most people don't know what to do with that. It's very uncomfortable for some people just being somewhere, especially with another human. For example, if I'm sitting here with someone and I'm just there, not saying anything, to most people that's very uncomfortable because they're waiting, they're not being. If you in a situation like that, you've done it before, probably on the bus or somewhere in public where you're around someone you don't know, and you just have to be there. But for most people, they try to. I've been on the bus before. They try to avoid having anyone too close in their proximities so they don't have to feel that uncomfortableness. But even when compassion grows and it deepens, maybe you have no seat there on the bus or the train and you do have to sit with them. And okay, it's going a little deeper, but knowing that they are ultimately you in the sense that the consciousness that you are is the consciousness that they are, so you are one and the same. You have the ability to interact. And there's an ease in that interaction. There's no superficial, oh, you know that. Instead, there's oh, hello, how are you? And you have a seat there and you begin to be. There's no uncomfortableness. It's wonderful. Try it sometime. Whenever you're somewhere in public and maybe you're standing in line, and usually people try to distract themselves. Here it is. Distracting themselves instead of using that opportunity to be. Use waiting as a stepping stone to accelerating your spiritual growth, your personal growth. You'll no longer have these uncomfortable situations where you're uncomfortable with silence where you're uncomfortable with the presence of another person. Well, where you're uncomfortable with the situation where you have to wait because you're not waiting. You're genuinely being there. And you don't project yourself mentally to the next moment. So then you become frustrated. You don't do that. You relax in that state of beingness. You relax in that state of awareness. You relax in that state of aliveness. Thank you for joining me.